Okay. Okay. So just, I guess you can stay too complicated to stay. We'll just say that Mary, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, to him. Hail Mary, full of grace, Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou, women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Saint Vincent Ferrer, Saint Jude, Lady of Victory, Lady of Sorrows, Lady of Christians, Saint Ignatius. Next is 45 also. 45. So then, I think it's just the essence of the system we explained here. So remember, the conclusion of modernism is going to be, there's going to be only two elements. That's what's going to be the conclusion. Religion is going to be completely gone, right? And the St. Vincent points out that there's stages of this modernist world. This is a summary of the whole, how the process works. Over here in this second chart, beyond the phenomena is big, it's smaller. The visible gets bigger. And remember about the visible world and the conscious. We must understand that this world is not a world of free will, and it's not a world of freedom. It's a very cold and hard communistic world, because you'll notice communism is essentially the same. One thing that's becoming very noticeable in the world in general, you'll notice it happening in music and in culture in general. The differences between peoples, the differences between religions, the differences between music, like in this part of the world, in the country here, I think even in the 80s, whatever, if you listen to country music, you don't listen to rock and roll. If you listen to rock and roll, you don't listen to country. Now you can't tell the difference between any of them, and everybody listens across the board. And everything is becoming the same, all the way across the board. There is a unification happening. This unification is not by accident, it is a preparation for the coming of the Antichrist. If you put the forces behind modernism into the picture, they are Satanists, and they are preparing the world for the coming of the Antichrist. But in order for the world to be ready for the Antichrist, the people have to be ready. St. Basil points this out in one of his sermons on the crucifixion of Christ. He says, look at the year 30 AD. Annas, Caiaphas, Herod, Pilate. All of them were just as evil in the year 30 as they were in the year 33. All of them were ready to crucify Christ right away in the year 30, just as ready as they were in the year 33. We don't notice any change in Annas, Caiaphas, Herod, or Pilate. In other words, the great leaders genuinely tend to be evil, and if they're not evil, they easily succumb to evil. Just pay them enough money or give them enough pleasures. But why is it that it took 3.5 years to crucify Christ? And St. Basil points out the reason, he says, is the crowd. The crowd. Says the crowd had to be transformed into a mob. And crowd and mob are not the same thing. There was a process of changing the crowd into a mob. That's what had to happen. And when the crowd was ready to turn into a mob, then they crucified Christ. So likewise, in the preparation for the Antichrist, who will be the most wicked leader of all time, the mob, that is the crowd of men, have to be transformed into a mob. They have to be readied so that when the man of evil comes, they will stand up and follow him. They will stand up and adore him. They will blindly obey him. They will follow him. That's what they're going to do when the mob comes, when the Antichrist comes. So this is the forces who created this heresy of modernism, which is essentially really the closest thing we can get to the satanic mind, slowly being pushed into everyone's heads. We notice that the modernist thinking, the modernist spirit, the modernist mentality, the modernist ideology is now in almost every person. Now that it's in almost every person, the world is ready for the Antichrist to come. It was well on the way to being almost in every person in 1907. It is almost in every person in 2017. We have to note that it's the same error, same heresy that's heading in this direction. The direction being The only world is going to be a cold, visible, material world ruled by a bunch of Mr. Spocks. And a bunch of, you'll notice these in the 1950s movies about science fiction movies, and movies in the 40s and 50s and so on, all the time when you see aliens, or when you see disease and massive death and destruction, there's always a scientist. And the scientist says, well, I don't really believe in the morality of killing or not killing. It's just, this is the reality, this is what happens. Bullet goes through a guy's head, it blows apart. This is what happens in culture, and I can only tell you the scientific thing. I can only tell you the material thing. I can only tell you what science has to say. I can only tell you what science has to say. What science has to say. And at the end of the world, there's going to be only scientists. And these scientists are going to rule every aspect of society. Remember that whenever there's a crime, there's always a criminal. Somebody's benefiting from the crime. Who's the criminal that's benefiting from modernism? Who's the criminal that's getting more and more powerful, more and more wealthy? It's the scientist. Scientist and the modern doctor. These are the ones. They are governing and ruling the world. And then, of course, the journalist. Journalist is like the historian. We'll find that all they are is these 7 heads showing themselves. Now, St. Pius, the goal is to destroy all religion, destroy all free will, destroy all freedom of any kind, including natural freedoms. Like, for instance, I remember seeing or hearing on Alex Jones' radio about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, it was a radio thing, and a guy is in, it says the future, and there's a guy who calls up, you know, Ralph's Hamburgers. Yeah, he calls up the phone and goes, hello, and goes, hi Ted Johnson, how are you? Oh, well, you know, I'm calling to order a double cheeseburger. Well, you know, with your heart condition, you really shouldn't be having that. And with your doctor said because of your diabetes, you really shouldn't have that. But we're willing to give you the hamburger as long as you sign off this little form and pay $275 for the burger. We have this nice salad, which has been approved by the doctor for you. You want to deliver it in the parking lot with your girlfriend? Or do you want to come over and get it? So that the guy calls up a fast food place. Fast food place knows his medical history. Fast food place knows what he's allowed to eat, what he's not allowed to eat. Fast food place has approved foods for him, and he has no choice but to get the 25-cent salad. Or the $375 hamburger if he wants. So that you can see the world is heading into a situation where it's going to become illegal to be fat. It's going to become illegal to be unhealthy. It's going to become illegal to say any word that is not considered appropriate. The so-called political correctness. And the penalty will be torture, prison, death. People generally aren't looking forward to that kind of a world. In a recent survey, the average person did not want to be a total slave in every aspect of his life and live in complete torture and pain. So how do you prepare for that world? You prepare for it by lies. You prepare for it by deception. And so here are the 7 deceptions. Now there are many other ones. Modernism is such a huge heresy. One of the great miracles of St. Pius X is to summarize such a massive heresy into this little document. And he says, you must understand it, because the modernist wants you to believe that he is divided. So remember, this is what we're after. In modernism, we're going to a world in which there is no God, no free will. Everything is going to be controlled by the government on the outside, by the psychiatrist, by the psychologist, and by the family, what do you call the social worker on the inside. Social worker and psychiatrist and psychologist will control your home. And the doctor will control your food. And the scientist and the government will control every movement of your life. And everyone has a total of one option. Except, of course, the king and the modernist himself. He has other options. But everyone else is only one. That's the goal. When you want to destroy people and culture like that, the only way to do it is through deception. St. Pius X wants to point out that deception, and then he wants to take practical steps, which he did do, to wage war against it. And it was a great miracle that he did so. The world was ready for Vatican II in 1907, or 1903 when he was elected Pope. There were already Masonic cardinals. There was already great wickedness throughout the entire world. The world was ready for the New World Order. One Italian peasant stood up and changed it all. We'll see in history St. Pius X, one of the greatest churchmen and greatest saints that ever lived, his ability to take practical steps to obliterate it. First of all, we've got to understand. So here's one way to draw it. He said that imagine that you've got a trench, and we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 holes. 7 different guys you're shooting at. St. Pius is going to point out, you got to kill these 7 guys. What you don't realize is that there's a trench underneath these 7 guys. And you're only shooting at one guy. When this guy here is shooting at you, and you get him, now you shoot at that guy, he actually drops down and pops up in the other hole. He drops down and pops up in the other hole. Drops down and pops up in the other hole. It's like cutting the grass. Trying to get rid of the weeds by cutting the grass. It's going to keep always coming back. It's not going to work. You have to kill the roots. You got to destroy the tunnel system. This is modernism. This is the modernist. One organized modernist system. That's down to the bottom. He's got 7 heads. There's a structure and order to these heads. The first one is philosopher. Second one, believer. And the third one equals the theologian. Let me get the order right here. The order matters. Then the fourth one is the historian. The fifth one is the, what do you call it? The apologist first one? 1 second.
Critic.
That's a critic, yeah, apologist later. The critic. The sixth one is the apologist. The 7th one is the reformer. Now remember, it's one guy. If you understand philosopher, you understand the other 6. If you understand reformer, you understand the other 6. But the most important of them is philosopher. One guy, one trench system, makes himself look like 7 different guys. He does not want you to know that they're connected. He wants you to believe that these are, you may have heard this term before, independent pockets of resistance. That's what he wants you to believe. One of the signs. You want to have an independent pocket. We're all independent. And then we are not connected. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Independent pockets of resistance, right? So, these are the guys. Philosopher, believer, theologian, historian, critic, apologist, and reformer. If I understand, the majority of the encyclical at the beginning is explaining philosopher. He's the most important. He's the real man. He's the scientist, the background. He's the God. Everything else is following from that. Remember about philosophy, every human being is a philosopher. Philosophy equals the actual term means love of wisdom. The definition of philosophy is scientiam rerum omnium per altissimas causas. The science of all things through the highest causes. It's a science, we'll put it here briefly, philosophy is a science of all things through the highest causes, or the deepest causes, altissimas, the highest or the deepest causes. Philosophy is a science of all things. How many sciences? One science. Every human being is a philosopher. No man can be without philosophy. Philosophy governs every one of our lives. So if I can change the philosophy of a man, I have changed him. If I can destroy true philosophy of a man, I have destroyed him. There's the war. Philosophy. Theology in the real world, the true world, not the world of the modernist, is actually the same as philosophy, with one exception only. Theology is a study and science of all things, but with divine revelation helping us out. Through the light of divine revelation, with the help of grace. Philosophy, not considering the help of divine revelation, the help of grace. The real world is a theological world, not a philosophical world. It's a theological world. Because God made us with grace, it's the way He made Adam, and He made us for heaven. So this philosopher, he's the most important, and you've got this heavy explanation of what the philosophy is in the paragraphs 6 through 13. Understanding paragraphs 6 through 13 is understanding everything in the encyclical. How the modernist works. And then once you understand that, you can take the system and plug it in, 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 anywhere. That's what you can do. So, in any case, he's got 7 heads. He wants you to think, one of the first things that the modernist tells you, each science is independent. Each science is unrelated to every other science, particularly religious sciences and physical sciences. These sciences should never be connected, because remember, going back to our chart, what's the principle? The beyond the phenomena, which is this purple stuff here, these things are not real. And the things in the black are real. So, and they never ever, remember, the lines never cross. So therefore, if in theology we learn that God created all things in 6 days, that's fine to believe that. But we know in science that the world evolved over millions of years. There should be no conflict between the man that knows that the world has evolved in millions of years through scientific evolutionary processes, and the same man that believes God truly created the world in 6 days. This isn't a problem, and it's not a contradiction. Why not? Because I believe in my spiritual mind that God created the world in 6 days. That has a lot of meaning. It just means a lot. 6 is a very important number. You know, I was born on the 6th of June. 6 is such an important number to me. It's an ancient number to man. 6 days, very important, and yesterday, love was such an easy game to play, and I love days. So, it's whatever is spirit, it means a lot to me, and I firmly believe it in my spiritual mind. But in my real mind, I know that the world was evolved over millions of years. And there shouldn't be any conflict. The Catholic religion and evolution have no conflict one with another. And St. Pius X says, when the modernist tells you that, know this. He is a liar. He's a liar. Why does he tell you that? In order that you might put your guard down. Come back tomorrow, and he'll tell you you can't believe in the 6 days anymore. Come back the next day, and he'll tell you that your spirituality is only for morality. Remember, about 30 years ago, the average human being believed that morality, being good and avoiding evil in our moral conduct, was a matter of religion, whereas the real world's construction and makeup was a matter of science. But we now know that it is a matter of science that homosexuality is a normal behavior for some human beings. And therefore it is not a matter of morality. We now know that homosexuality has exited the realm of morality and is in the realm of science. And therefore, it is no longer the right for a religious individual to comment on homosexuality. And if people of religion speak against homosexuality, they are going against the known dictates and proving of science. Therefore, they can be imprisoned, they can be thrown out of, they can lose their tax-exempt status, they can be fined, they can be shut down. Because they're not staying in the purple world of religion. Now, how that happened? Remember the chart. Visible world grows. The religious world shrinks. Yesterday, the priest could tell you you could not be married 10 times. Yesterday, the priest could tell you you could not be homosexual and practice the vice of homosexuality and go to heaven. Now, the priest can no longer tell you that because science has advanced. Is science going to stop advancing? No. Already, I myself have already seen, just walking by TV sets in the airport and seeing part things here and there. I saw about 5 years ago, already, an English TV show, whatever it was, I don't know the name of it, in which these people got together and they had a bishop who was an African bishop defending that Christianity has been good for humanity, and they had a scientist defending that Christianity was bad for humanity. And the African bishop did a good job of explaining. And in the very beginning, they asked people, who thinks religion is good for humanity? And about 70% raised their hands, said it was good for humanity. Then they had a debate. At the end of the debate, about 30% raised their hands and said that religion was good for humanity. In fact, the African bishop explained quite well, in the part that I saw, how humanity would be to hell in a handbasket without religion. The scientist was an idiot. But obviously the crowd was a kind of a rigged crowd, and it was a rigged, arranged TV show to get people to realize, look, we have to face religion has been the cause of all the wars in society. Religion has been the cause of all violence. Look at the Muslims fighting the Christians, the Protestants fighting the Catholics. It's religion that's the problem. So therefore, in order to have an ordered society, the next stage, we must be rid of religion. St. Pius X points that out. So remember, this is an ongoing application of the movements of the modernist universe. 4 elements: subconscious, conscious, visible phenomena only as visible, and beyond the phenomena. Beyond the phenomena, realm of religion. Subconscious on the inside, realm of religion, always shrinking. Conscious, realm of the psychiatrist, the psychologist, and the doctor. And the visible reality, the realm of the philosopher and the scientist. These things are going to continue to grow. So, how does it happen? Well, the modernist explains this one science of all things. What happens? In the very beginning, everything begins, the first step is agnosticism. First step. Man comes into the world. You see here, I think it's in the phenomenism, agnosticism, vital eminence, and then creation. Now, so the first step is agnosticism. Remember this about everything. The first step in theology, agnosticism. The first step in history, agnosticism. The first rule of the critic, agnosticism. First rule of the apologist, agnosticism. First rule of the reformer, agnosticism. The real world begins with agnosticism. Now here the key to understand about agnosticism. Agnosticism means, here's the key element, I cannot know God. Now you can replace God with Muhammad Ali, you can replace God with George Bush, with Donald Trump, with the Muslim religion, with anything. Remember, it's a system. So right now we're talking about God. We can plug out God, plug in anything. My first knowledge is I'm absolutely certain that I cannot know God and no one can know God. Okay? No one can know God. Remember, the idea of agnosticism is that it's beyond knowledge. So you don't know the 5 notions of the Blessed Trinity. You don't know the 5 notions of the Blessed Trinity. You don't have them memorized. But all you have to do is be told them, and then you will know them. You may not know all the details of the principles of geometry, but you can look it up and you will know them. This is not what we mean by agnosticism. Here we make that it is impossible to know, no matter how intelligent you are, no matter how studied you are, you cannot know. This is the key to the success of the modernist in his argumentation. Now, with regard to anything that's not visible, first principle, that which is not principle cannot be known by anyone, period. Finished. Remember, part of our creed, God created all things visible and invisible. He did not only create visible things, He created invisible things. Not just the angels, but in fact the invisible elements of our universe. He created visible and invisible things. And in fact, the things, nature, is always invisible. Like darkness, tableness, whiteboardness, baldness, all that is invisible, stickness. But it's real, and it's created by God. So the modernist says, it's not real. And that's how he begins. But later on he's going to tell you, the only person that can know this stuff, well, happens to be, well, me. And here is the key difference between modernism and subjectivism. First step, agnosticism. Whenever you meet anyone on any subject, you know, I'm a theologian, and I can tell you that the Catholic Church teaches that there are 5 notions in the Blessed Trinity. Look, I never heard that before. I don't know anything about it. And I know that you can't know that, because if it was known, it would have been on the news. If it was known, I would have known about it already. Cannot be known. Now you'll notice in the world today, this kind of argument is normal amongst everybody. How come I never heard about it? How come I didn't see it? How come I don't know it? If I don't know it, no matter what it is, it cannot be known, and no one can know it. Principle number 1, agnosticism. St. Vincent says, how does this begin? Later on, I think it's paragraph 41. He says, modernism lives in pride as in its own house. Modernism lives in pride as in its own house. Pride is the foundation. Pride is what makes modernism powerful inside of hearts. Pride is what makes modernism work inside of hearts. See, agnosticism, no matter what the subject is, I remember one man used to tell me, you know, my wife, she's an expert on philosophy. Unless you're talking science, and she's an expert on science. Well, unless you're talking history, well then she's an expert on history. She's only an expert on one subject, that is, the subject you're talking about right now. You can change that subject as many times as you like, and you will discover that she is the expert on every single stinking one of them. That's actually modernism. It's not just pride, but it's pride turned into a system. It's pride turned into a way of operating in every aspect of life. Normal pride doesn't actually operate like that. Normal pride is, you know, I play basketball, I'm better than all you guys, but at least I play basketball. So if I never dribbled a ball in my life, I'm not going to claim that I'm better than all you guys. There was a musician that told me about that. I went to one wedding back about 20 years ago. I went to a wedding. I went into one of the many weddings, and they had this band. And it was a rock and roll band, and the youngest guy in the band was, I think, 106 or something. You know, they were singing, you know, what is it, some, I don't know, Beatles or something, but Beatles were quite, these guys were 106. I said, what on earth has happened to you guys? And he says, well, the guy told me, he says, you know what happens? We're trying to, you know, when we used to start playing, he says, you know now what happens? A guy comes in, he wants to be a drummer. He's beat on a drum for 2 days. He doesn't even know how to hit it in time or whatever. He's got to be the lead drummer, and he's an expert in drums. Another guy comes in who's picked the guitar twice and doesn't even know where the notes are. I can play the guitar, man. I'm really good. Isn't that cool? He can't even strum the guitar and play crap music. He's an expert. Because we can't teach these guys. Everybody is an expert in everything, and this is a hallmark of our age and one of the goals of where the modernist is leading. Now, whether you believe that, now the real person does that, he becomes usually, he can't accomplish anything. But in fact, there's only going to be one true expert. So agnosticism is the beginning. And we must remember that, the difference between subjectivism and modernism. Subjectivism teaches that whatever you believe is right, whatever I believe is right, we all believe different things and they're all right. One's right for you, the other one's right for me. Modernism does not teach that. Modernism is completely objective. Modernism believes that there's only one objective truth. And it's the hard truth, whether you like it or not. There's only one truth. This truth, however, changes. Why does it change? Because of evolution. Since the truth changes, if you grab onto a truth that you understood when you were 5, when you come back at 10, it's useless because the truth has changed between 5 and 10. And therefore, how is the only way that I can come into contact with true, objective truth? The only way, the latest expert. Expert, latest expert. Whatever the latest expert says is true. You know, I actually had an argument with a society priest. One example, I mentioned it sometimes in sermons or in talks about 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago. With an SSPX priest, we argued about margarine and butter. Very theological argument. And he said, you know, scientists proved in the 1970s that butter is bad for your health and you need margarine. Remember, margarine's good for you, butter is bad. And so for about 30 years, margarine was really good, butter was really bad. But they discovered in the late 90s that margarine is bad and butter is good. So butter became good again. So if you had margarine in 1979, you're healthy. If you had butter in 1979, you're dying. If you have margarine in 2009, you're dying. If you have butter in 2009, you're healthy. Why? Because the scientist's view of margarine and butter changed. Therefore, the effects of margarine and butter on the body changed. That is really stupid. But that is how modernism works. And we had this argument, and we argued and argued and argued. I said, look, the body is the same kind of body now as it was before. If margarine was bad for you yesterday, it's still bad today. If butter was good for you yesterday, it's still good today. And if the scientists said one way one day, another way another day, they said the truth one day and they said an error the other day. He said no, they said truth both days, the truth changed. Now this applies to everything. What is the consequence of truth changing? It means my only contact with truth is expert and authority. I must accept whatever the expert and the latest authority says. That's what I have to do. Or else, cannot know any truth. And so that's a very important principle of modernism, or conclusion of modernism. We have to accept what the experts say. We have no choice. This is called pure tyranny. Absolute pure tyranny. Because the expert can say, example, I've already dealt with multiple cases. An application of this is social workers. Social worker comes to your house. Police officer comes to your house. Social worker says, in my professional opinion, this child should not be with that mother. Get him out of here. The police officer is required to remove the child. The social worker does not need to say, this parent is beating the child to living hell. This parent is an alcoholic. This parent is a serial killer. This parent is a murderer, or any other thing. Only, in my professional opinion, as a trained social worker, this child must go. That's it. No proof is required. No explanation is required. That is modernism. Modernism applies itself in every aspect of our society today. Getting back to the beginning, agnosticism is the first step. When man began to evolve, he realized that the world outside of him was big, and he wanted an explanation. He asked the question, why? And he didn't know the answer. And not knowing the answer, he decided to invent something that would explain the answer. He said, God. Anything that cannot be explained or understood, God did it. As he grows in his understanding, God gets smaller, the understanding gets bigger. But in the very beginning, he understands that there is a God. And there we're going to go from the first philosopher, which asked the question, why? To the first believer, who believes that the answer to that question is God. Because he doesn't know anything else. He feels the need of an explanation of why he's hungry, an explanation of why, that when he eats certain things it makes him happy, eats other things, he dies. He wants to understand why he has certain feelings of anger, certain feelings of happiness, certain feelings of pleasure, certain feelings of good days, bad days. He has thoughts. He doesn't understand why any of these things are happening. What's the answer? God. Who's going to explain the end? And so he's going to become a believer. That's the next stage. He's going to become a believer. But he cannot know what the answer is. And then what's going to happen is a process, which is the engine of modernism. Vital immanence. There is this power inside of man. It's already the second bell. Okay, well, it's Father's class now. Okay? There is this power inside of man that makes him create something. This is the evolutionary process. See, remember, first you have nothing. And then that nothing has a power inside of it that makes the first big bang. Then you have fire, stardust. You'll see it in rock and roll songs. You'll see it in modern scientific explanations and modern moral explanations. In the modern schools, they always tell you, we are stardust. We came from a fire and from an explosion. Guess what that fire is? It's called the fire of hell. That explosion was the creation of hell in the beginning of time when Lucifer was driven into hell by St. Michael. And Lucifer wants to make himself the God of all men, saying, you came from fire. This is theological. This is spiritual. So that when the ruler of the fire comes to rule over us, we will accept him. We've known him well. We understand his thinking. We understand the way he operates. And we believe and follow him. That's what's going to happen when the Antichrist comes under the direction of Lucifer. And what makes it work? Vital immanence. You will be like unto God. You have a power inside of you to create. Really create. Make something out of nothing. So that there was an ape and he made man. There was a dog and he made horse. There was a fish and he made amphibian. Amphibian made reptile. Reptile made bird. And so we're always creating new things. There's an immanent vital power inside of us. And then we'll close here and take a 2-minute break and hand you over to Father Hugo. But there's an immanent vital power inside of us. And basically to understand it, that God is the first product of this immanent vital power. Is God real? Oh yes, He is. God is very real. How do we know God is real? Because there are outside needs, outside influences came inside of me, and then they were vomited out. Outside need influences came inside of me, and they were pooped out. God is poop, and God is vomit. It's real. God is brought forth out of my inner self. He's vomited forth. So when a modernist says God is real, yes, I believe in a real God. He's a real God who came forth from man. Hence, the modernist says, as St. Pius points out a little bit later, God is both the creator and the created. God is creator and created. He creates the spiritual things in the world. He was created by man. Vital immanence. No one can know. Vital immanence. Production of realities. Now we can know those realities. Agnosticism disappears. Knowledge is replaced. the world of Gnosticism disappears, and we only have the world of the visible and the conscious. So anyway, we'll close here, take a 2-minute break, and then I'll hand it over to Father Hugo. So we'll just say a quick prayer here. We can stand up. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Saint Vincent Ferrer, Saint Jude, Our Lady of Victory, Our Lady of Sorrows, Saint of Christians, Saint Ignatius.